All right. Everybody knows we love Dogtra, dogtra.com. The YS600 bar collars, the 1900S black. That's one of Ted's favorites. Check them out, WDR10 for 10% off a single item over $200. That is dogtra.com.
Hits Canine for handlers by handlers in Chocolate City for 2024. New Orleans 2024, August 21st to the 23rd. Hit them up. Hits Canine, letter K9.net. Don't wait till the last minute to sign up.
We have a great relationship with the folks down at Kinetic Dog Food. They have a great balance of healthy meats, grains, and is made specifically for working and sporting dogs. Check them out, kineticdogfood.com. You will not be disappointed. They are great.
Hey guys, be sure to check out Ray Allen Manufacturing's new training app that they've got, iTunes Store and the Android Store. New product collaborations. Be sure to check it out. We also got a new discount code RAM, R-A-M-W-D-R, RAM WDR for 10% off, rayallen.com. American Aluminum, best inserts in the game. Hit them up at Easy Rider Online. That's the letter E, Z, rideronline.com.
Brand new advertiser, guys, Rec Specs. We love them. They believe that any adventure, work, or play is better with a dog by your side to keep them protected and with you no matter what. Rec Specs designs and manufactures performance-driven dog gear for the active and working dog. 20% off your first order. Discount code Working Dog Radio. All right, everybody, we are back. Working Dog Radio, broadcasting the bite. As usual, I am Eric Stambro from sunny, rainy, cold Malvern, Ohio. And with me, as usual, I was about to say Sunny, and Ted was like, "You're a liar." Is Ted Summers from Tulsa, Oklahoma? Ted, what's going on, buddy?
Everyone knows the sun doesn't shine in Ohio.
It did for 3 minutes today.
I'm sure it did. So this episode is going to post like the end of January sometime, but this is literally the last episode of the year, so it's right before New Year's. Yeah, we had dog go home on the 26th. So
yeah, dude, you got a big class coming,
dude.
It seems to grow.
It was all day. Dudes picking dogs up and taking them. I got 4 states and 3 judicial districts in one class. So
nice. 23 or 24 or something like that?
It's going to be less. It's going to be like high teens, like 17, 19 dogs. I'm still kind of waiting. We have some retreads of dogs we didn't train. So for those listening that are in Oklahoma, our state just passed. We're one of the few states that has a mandatory state certification. Ohio does too. But to get your letter to test. So basically the way it works in Oklahoma is you go, like the first time you get certified, you have to have a letter to test, and you give that to one of our state evaluators. You go, you pass your test or you don't, whatever. And then the state evaluator turns that in. Our then board, CLEAT, which is like our version of POST or OPOD or whatever, then turns around and sends your agency your certification. But you're good to go like right then. However, they have made it mandatory that you must do a 160-hour course to get your letter to test, which I think is great. So I think I'm running definitely the largest, first class under the new regulations. We start January 2nd. So long after this episode airs, right towards the end of this class. So I'll have these guys for like a month, but, I have several of my handlers, coming in to help instruct, from some of the neighboring agencies and stuff. So, yeah, and I'm already getting ready for March. So we're going to offset because Anthony Moore, who's been a guest on the show, one of our state certifiers, handles for the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, handles a dog named Pablo. He's going to help instruct, but he's also running a 160-hour course in February for other agencies as well. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to offset. Like I'm going to take January, March, May, June, and he's going to take February. Like we're going to like offset back and forth. So, yeah, and I'm going to go help him with his. He's going to help me with mine. So everybody gets everything. It's like co-parenting. It's going to be great.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, and then I'm dealing with the 501. So if you're listening in Oklahoma, the 501 is live. So Oklahoma, it's Oil Capital Canine Fund, capital spell like money, CAPATIL, caninefund.org. But that's for Oklahoma teams. So yeah, hit it up, look it up. What have you been doing?
Just kind of running the pet side of the business. I had a training group at the building, the Funhouse, yesterday. I was supposed to have a group there today, but it was too short notice for them. They canceled, but which was fine. I had a lot to do. Just kind of revamping the pet side and just doing some different things. So I got to be in there all the time. Still going. I break and go to 10 a.m. jujitsu class, and so this is Saturday.
Involuntarily folding laundry with people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Saturday I went to what was it? Fuck, I can't remember what day it was. Saturday was class, and then so we did class, no gi, and then we stayed and rolled afterwards. And old manned my rib cage. I've been running hot, man. I've been running good, no injuries, no nothing, no strains, no nothing. And I think I pulled a muscle like right under the lower rib cage. I tried this. It's called an UPA. I was just pushing this guy off of me, and I missed a thing, so he was able to brace out, and I just ran into a brick wall. He's actually a canine handler, good dude, and normal non-54-year-olds would not have bothered them. But so I rolled a few more times, and then I left. By the time I got to the truck out in the parking lot, I was like, fuck, I need ibuprofen. And so, are you going to take some time off? Yeah. The rest of Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So Tuesday was open mat. So I went yesterday to open mat.
No one likes a quitter.
Right. I am who I am. That's all there is to it. So I went, yeah, and I'm hurting today. So, but guess what? I went to 10 a.m. class again today. I did not roll this time. I just drilled, but we were drilling throws. So that was fun. Landed on the other side, though. Yeah, but I must be standing weird a little bit because now, like the middle of my back on the right side it's off. There's something going on.
You need to go to a chiropractor, not one of the witch doctor ones.
I think I need to just go hang somewhere from my hands, like
that too. You need one of those teeter hang up things. Hang upside down by your feet.
That's how I die. That one, all the blood. I grew up in an era. If you're upside down, all the blood rushes to your head and you die.
Exactly.
That's what they told us. And you could get sick by going outside with wet hair. So, anyways, that's pretty much what was going on. I've booked a bunch of seminars.
I was going to say,
class.
I see that.
Yeah, I got to start making flyers for those. But I'll be. I don't think I have any in January, but February is a couple, March is a couple, April, May. So we'll just keep rolling on that. Then, that reminds me, I got to answer. I got getting our room signed up for Hold the Line conference at Myrtle Beach.
Oh, yeah. In March, right? Yeah, March.
Yeah, I got to answer their email about that. But Ted and I will both be instructing there. He's teaching the scenario-based training class, and I'll be teaching e-collar class. So you can jump, between probably a couple times we'll teach, so that at least you get a chance in between there.
Come heckle us.
They seem to always put really good instructors at the same time you and I are teaching, so I get bummed out because there's guys I want to see.
Seriously, the last time I was there was the guys that I was like, I want to go to this guy's class and this guy's class, and we're teaching at the same time. I'm like,
yeah, damn it.
So I know. So
all right, what do we got going on tonight, brother?
So we did an episode last month where it was just you and I talking about weed cases and weed law and people freaking out because Ohio passed medicinal or passed recreational, and of course everyone in Ohio freaked the fuck out, and just like they did everywhere else in the country, every time it goes it goes medicinal. So our guest tonight has been involved in another study that potentially has the ability to freak everyone out again. And we're recording this at a date when it has not been published yet. So we're not going to publish this episode until whoever we'll let our guest talk about all this shit. But we're going to publish this kind of like after it, like the next available time that we normally publish after this thing comes out. But tonight, from Next Level Canine down in Texas is Steve Antommarchi. Steve, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you guys for having me on.
Well, hell yeah. No, when this episode, we actually heard from one of our other guests, from who was it, Eric?
Josh Brainerd.
Yeah, Josh Brainerd. Like he's like, yo, you need to have Steve on about this because it's going to freak people out. And I'm like, what? And I didn't get a chance to talk to him because I had other shit going on. And then he called Eric, and Eric was like, yo, hey, this is what's going on, and we need to have him on. I'm like, all right, well, like, so what is it? He told me. I'm like, oh, okay. So, like, I want to hear what's going on. So, give us a little bit of your background first before we get into the sky is falling.
For sure.
And because I foresee, like, by the time this episode comes out, like, the study will have been out for, I don't know, probably about a week, and
Right.
people are just going to give up and sell all their dogs in that time frame. So
Jump off buildings. And,
when they publish the study, I'm going to publish some short clips of this episode and be like, don't freak out, like, just chill out. So go ahead and give us your background a little bit, and then we'll go into why you shouldn't freak out.
Perfect. I'll give you the short, right? I'll give you guys a heads up real quick. Do not freak out. Whatever you interpret the study as saying, let me just say it very plainly. Yes, we've recognized that there potentially is a problem with certain dogs, differentiating between hemp and marijuana. But the good news is we have the answer, and it's been 3 years in the making. And so we do have an answer. We're going to be able to tell you where to get hemp products, how to help your dog discriminate between the odors of hemp and marijuana. So don't freak out. Everything's going to be okay. There's your short right there.
All right.
great. All right. Let's start from where you're from.
Right on. So
there we go.
I'm originally from New Jersey, a small little town called Wharton, New Jersey. So shout out to like the 500 people that live in Wharton. Got into canine realistically as a volunteer fireman for a local agency in New Jersey, and responded to 9/11. So in that time, I was able to see my first dog work, and I always tell people it's kind of like the first time I recognized that I wanted to do something for a living. I had an idea for a while that I want to be a lawyer. I was in college, then realized that I'm not a really good student. I didn't really like school at that time. It's kind of funny saying it now because that's all I do now is study and everything else that I do.
Right.
So anyway, I had an opportunity to see a dog work on 9/11, and it changed my world. I got to see a lab work about, I don't know, 30, 40 feet from me. And the lab was injured, of course, looking for people. And the handler must have had some medical background, because the handler pretty much sutured the dog in the field, cleaned up the dog, and the dog went right back to work. And for me, that was life-changing. That was something out of a movie. And I tell everybody it was my first actual conversation with God. Like, if I ever get an opportunity to do something that cool, please send me. I want to do something that cool. Fast forward, 15 years, I'm had an opportunity to be a cop, still am. Got an opportunity to work bomb dogs in the private sector, kind of got my feet wet there. And then had an opportunity to, as a police officer, respond to some crazy scenes, mainly the one in Dallas where the 5 officers got killed on July 7, 2016, I believe that's when it was. The BLM riots were happening.
Mm-hmm.
So during that time, I got an opportunity to kind of just take all the skills that I had obtained during that time and really put it to the test, and search the downtown Dallas area for IEDs. The information we had at that time, of course, was obviously this guy's serious, and that during the negotiations, he had mentioned that he had hidden IEDs all over the downtown area. The information at the time was that when he arrived and parked, there was another vehicle that parked next to him, maybe a parking spot away from him, and it was a male and female that got out, had a small conversation with the suspect, and went opposite directions. So we were pretty positive that the female that was carrying a backpack had the IEDs, and she was placing it downtown. So that's a little bit of inside information during that time and that specific deployment. So I had an opportunity to learn a lot from that. Made some mistakes that I'm very transparent about, because I want our industry to learn, especially from my mistakes in a deployment like that. One of the things that didn't do particularly well was, at that time, didn't expose my dog to human blood, and some of the distractors you're going to see in a scene like that. So we had some, a hard time kind of moving around that area and that scene where there was blood. But we spent 12 hours, man, searching for 30 minutes, breaking for 30 minutes, searching for 20, back and forth kind of thing. And it was really difficult to go home not finding anything. I was pretty sure that there was probably something I missed, and that feeling didn't allow me to go to sleep for several days, to be quite frank. So you don't want to be the guy to miss anything like that, right? It's not a narcotic. We're talking about explosives. So we took it slow after that, try to get as much information as possible, and I'm happy to say that there was nothing found downtown. However, at the suspect's place, there was definitely bomb making material that the FBI ended up seizing and taking. So we think at least that he just didn't have enough time to test everything. But yeah, that's one of my deployments. More recently, we had a mass shooting in Allen, Texas, at a mall here, an outlet mall, where we had to respond to that. And the things that I learned from that first deployment definitely came into play. There was much more blood in this scene, of course. As a father, that's always hard to see little kids and their families slaughtered. Those are things that still working through, to be quite frank. Mentally, that's always a tough one as a husband and a father to see families just slaughtered like that. But as far as the deployments are concerned, super happy with how my dog performed that day, and yeah, that's kind of a history of some of my deployments and some of the things that I've done in my career, at least.
The Dallas stuff is that's crazy. I was still on the police department, still a cop. Like really, was really struck hard by that one. Watching it, there was video of some stuff that you could see that was fucking horrible. I still say to this date, the way they dispatched that dude, was pretty fucking unbelievable. But the fact that a police supervisor made that call to me is fan-fucking-tastic. Because they just don't do that. They don't make those tough calls.
When that happened, we were up in Pennsylvania at Tripwire, and there was some information going around. Shout out to Ryan and the guys at Tripwire. But when they told me what happened, I was like, "They did what?" And they walked us out into the lobby. They're like a version of this thing, because they have if you've never been to Tripwire, it's fucking awesome. They have all kinds of crazy. Have you ever been up there, Steve?
I have not yet.
Dude, you need to go see those guys just because they're great. But, and they're, as you would exactly expect them to be, but they had like a giant robot, like sitting in the fucking like entryway of the place. And they're like, it's one of those, but it was smaller. I'm like, they seriously just like put them like, yep. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So yeah. And I was going to say the thing in Allen, Texas, the body cam video from that is gnarly. I've seen that multiple times, and that is some hairy shit for sure. That I'm surprised that they released it that quickly, but I'm kudos to them. I mean, that was did he get called? Like, he got called and he was close already. Like, what was the story on that? Because he was there fast. Like, I mean, that dude was already like in the parking lot or something when shit started happening.
Yeah, so there's a perfect example of just being at the right place at the right time. There was some type of minor dispute over parking or something in that area. So he was actually in the parking lot handing out stickers to young kids, just doing good PR work for police department.
That's what it was.
And he hears the shots ring out. He immediately tells dispatch, "Hey, we got shots fired here. By the way, these things happen. Shots fired in Texas, right? Everyone's got guns." Mm-hmm. So initially it was, "Hey, we got shots fired. Hopefully it's a very isolated situation and incident." Because they've had issues there before with that. But obviously very different where you hear the type of fire that's happening and it's continuous and continuous and continuous. So, man, in that area, everything's kind of echoing. So he's doing his best, try to figure out exactly where it's coming from. And as you said, the video, gnarly video, he's running 100 yards before he finally sees the guy, takes a deep breath, and you can hear him. He takes 3, 4, 5 shots and smokes the guy. It was, they kind of constructed what they did, like a debriefing, and they kind of explained the angle in which he shot this dude was almost impossible. So they're just very, very, very blessed that he was able to stop the killing as fast as he did. And, he had his cover coming from the opposite way, which was a concern. He knew there was potential for crossfire. So he had to think about all these things, and he's absolutely exhausted. He's smoked. He's with his last couple breaths. He takes that. And then what you don't see, I don't think it had been made available to the public, or I don't know, nowadays you probably could find it anyway, is what happens afterwards. They're thinking there's another shooter. It's not over for him. So he takes that shot. He downs the guy. They confirm he's dead. And there are people running out saying there's someone in the back of this place, and it's absolutely chaotic. So the dude never gets an opportunity just to relax, and he's at a level 20 out of 10 the whole time.
Wow.
Dude, you could hear it. I mean, you could hear it in his voice when We had the handler on. They got shot from South Carolina, and same thing. Like you could hear, and it's rough because we chat like because I'm recording this is the 27th. Yesterday we had a shooting at the mall here in Tulsa, the huge mall, and it was some altercation. Like guys were yelling at each other, and one of them got shot and ended up dying. But they just released today that he died. But the chief of police is out there, and Tulsa's a large department. I mean, we're about 1.5 million in this area, and I think we have about 800 ish, almost 900 sworn. I think. The chief of police was out. I mean, it was a huge deal, and like the largest shopping area, like in this side of the state, it was massive. But it was just one shot, dude died. But it's yeah.
What I don't know. I heard a rumor. I don't know how I heard this recently that the Dallas PD borrowed the robot from the feds, and so they didn't blow up their own robot. That they blew up a FBI robot, maybe.
You know, I can't confirm that. I did hear that it was replaced rather quickly, and they didn't
that's
have any
even
problem.
that's baller as fuck. Let me use your robot. Hold on a minute. What are you gonna do? Don't worry about it. It'll be all right. We'll be all right.
Yeah, just
go blow that dude up. So,
Fed money.
how did you
Fed-
get to
Fed money.
Texas? Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So, my brother's a cop in Texas, and so long story short, he made the journey, and everybody thought maybe he was on witness protection or something. No one could understand why a Jersey boy would leave Jersey and go all the way to Texas, which culturally is about as separated as the two states can possibly be. Maybe California is a little bit more.
It's because of barbecue.
Yeah, well, you guys know you're close enough to know that there's good barbecue in Texas for sure.
Yes.
Cost of living.
There's not a New
quality
Jersey.
No.
No.
As a matter of fact, when my family comes here, they usually fly back with barbecue in their carry-on. So I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, I got an opportunity here in 2009 to join a police department here just north of Dallas, and kind of get my feet wet, do the whole patrol thing, understand how to be a cop. Then get an opportunity about 3-4 years afterwards to be a canine handler on the police side. By that time, I was already handling a dog in the private sector, working bomb stuff, trying to wrap my head around the chemistry and how things work. And my mind is never settled with a little bit of information. I have to understand how everything works. And that's a curse and a blessing at the same time, of course. So I find myself really understanding and trying to understand the academia side of canine, and have these deployments, and some are going well, some of them are not, and I don't want someone to tell me, well, that's just the way it goes sometimes. Like, I want to know why things are happening. So luckily I end up having some really good mentors who kind of taught me to have that perspective on work, is ask the why question, understand the why at all times, and got some answers, and eventually got hooked up with Florida International University, and were able to kind of do some studies with them. And we just started that relationship about 3 years ago, and we hope to be like the deployment or the boots on the ground part of a lot of their studies, because I know you guys had a guest before where you talked about, yes, the importance of science is there, but on the actual deployment side, right, the boots on the ground side has to be represented also.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that there you go.
There's a gap there for sure. There is a gap between the science people and the leash holders, without a doubt.
I'm hoping and I'm praying that I fill that gap, because I'm a guy who did everything on the ground first and then learned the science afterwards, not the other way around. And as scientists talk to me about certain philosophies, I'm happy to say and call BS on a lot of the things that they can do only in a controlled environment, or they sometimes say the dog can't do this. And I look at the quality of dogs they had, the number of dogs they had, and the background of those dogs. And I have to point out that part of the issue with some of the science is that the quality of dogs that are being utilized in some of these scientific studies are not quite up to snuff.
Yeah, my background prior to canine stuff, dog stuff in general, or I guess at the same time, was a lot of math and statistics and everything else. So I understand a lot of how that stuff works. So, and ultimately, and this comes in kind of more like on the pet side when people talk about like, oh, force free and, not using e-collars and whatever else. So there's any number of studies that get cited all the damn time. And the first thing that I constantly do is I'm like, look at the sample size, look at the sample, like what the population looked like and everything to see if it's representative of things. And in fact, there's a guest that's been on the show, Steve White, who I have a massive amount of respect for from Seattle PD. And I've instructed with him, and he's going to be at Blue Line. By the way, Steve Dean, 1,000-Hour Eyes. If you haven't sat through that presentation, it's amazing. Steve is awesome, and he's retired from Seattle PD now. But he's often cited by the force-free community as a guy that doesn't. He's like, oh, I don't advocate for use of force. And I'm like, I know, Steve. And that's not what he says. So, and Dunbar is the other one. Ian Dunbar is the guy that constantly gets misquoted and whatever else. So, it routinely gets like drawn, and which we're kind of going into what you're involved in right now, which is what I'm afraid of, is it's going to get sucked into this vortex of, I'm going to read it and it's going to say what I feel like it says. And because I can read some of these studies from an objective perspective and say, okay, they only had a sample size of 36 dogs. The 36 dogs were selected. This was the criteria for selection. And then they drew this conclusion. And I'm like, yeah, but if you selected 36 working Malinois, your samples, the conclusion would be completely different. So how valid are these results? And then there's a whole difference between a study and an actual study versus just like a rehash of what everyone else has already done. So it becomes interesting in terms of how they develop like answering some of these questions. But I think it's kind of important in what you're about to talk about. So
well, hold up, nerds. Stop before we jump too quick into what everybody's here to listen to. Let's back up real quick because everybody will be pissed if I don't ask you the dog that you worked when you went to Dallas. Tell me about that dog.
His name is Verdi. Verdi, ironically, was that might have been our second ever deployment. I had just got him from Metro Dade Canine in Miami. We had just certified. I love this dog to death, but I maybe had him for a week, maybe less than that. So it was like, oh, here we go. That's the other little tidbit of information that I'm glad you asked because I would have forgot to mention. So we didn't have a lot of time to work on that stuff,
That's deep into the pool.
Tell me about it.
Like going from handler school to treading water.
Yeah. Verdi was my second bomb dog. So I had worked bomb dogs in the past. But just like any new relationship, you might as well be green, right? Because that is very important to be able to read your dog and understand all these things that your dogs will do during certain deployments and certain odors. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's right. No. What breed was he?
He's listed as a German Shepherd. He's more like a Czech Shepherd, maybe German Czech Shepherd cross or something like that. He's still alive too.
Oh, nice. I figured the way you're talking.
Oh yeah.
What did you like about him and what didn't you like, or do you like and don't you like?
Yeah. So I love the fact that as soon as I would take his toy away from him, I didn't have to prep him with anything. He went right back to work. There was no obsession over a toy where I'm having to fight him over anything like that. He's a big, strong shepherd who could just go for days, much longer than I was willing to go, to be quite frank. Very independent searching. Obedience was not like, competition obedience by any means, but good enough where I can kind of direct him and do what I needed to do.
It doesn't need to be.
Yeah, exactly.
We sent a dog to Ukraine, and I was like, as long as he comes back and you can direct him, we're good.
Yeah. The worst thing about Verdi was his size. He was 95 pounds. So, I mean, just having to be able to take him places, groom him, brush him, all that stuff. But that's so minute. His pluses or his pros were way out the cons,
Yeah. Ted and I are both Malinois guys, right? We do a lot of Malinois and everything. But I always say a very, very good shepherd is such a dream to teach. Like, so nice to train.
I've had some gangsters come through for dual purpose in the last 6 months that are like
they're a pleasure, like a real.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
they're nice.
Just,
Dino, one's name is Dino. He's a gangster, and they're nice dogs. I like them when they're like that.
a little less mental things to deal with. You know, a little.
Yeah.
So they're really solid, easy to teach tracking to, and things like that. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and take a break. When we get back, we kind of alluded to some stuff. We're gonna get with Steven here on the main point of the topic of conversation, and then in our third segment, there's some stuff I want to talk to you about, like travel and different things that you've done, some stuff out of the country and everything that seems pretty cool. So, anyway, stick around, everybody. Don't forward. We have a lot of good people in our sponsors there. There's discount codes in the show notes. The Ray Allen discount code is new, so make sure you check that out and stick around. We'll be right back. We just finished the HITS Canine Training Conference this year in Phoenix, and what a great time it was. What a great turnout, great instructions. I don't know, like 1,300 guys there. It was amazing. Well, guess what? They're coming back next year, August 21st to the 23rd in New Orleans. You do not want to miss it, guys. I'm telling you, it's amazing. The giveaways, the instruction, the instructors, the hanging around at night, getting to meet people. And Ted and I will both be teaching there. If you check them out, hitscanine.net, or check them out online. They're everywhere, hitscanine.net. Sign up next year. Do not wait. We had a lot of people that waited too long and had to stay at a different hotel than host hotel. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss out. You will not find a larger conference to go to. It is by handlers, for handlers. You definitely don't want to miss it out. hitscanine.net, New Orleans, 2024.
We get it. Fueling a working dog can be tough, but they need high quality food to give them energy and nutrients they require for work and keep their gut healthy for everything that we ask them to do. Kinetic dog food is a great balance of healthy meats and grains and is made specifically for working and sporting dogs. They have a full line of foods and supplements available. Supplements are actually really cool. They have a weight gainer and they have an electrolyte one too, which is we actually use the kennel as it's so hot all the time in Oklahoma. And they've been working to perfect their line with thousands of dogs in hundreds of departments across the U.S. And you can buy it locally, or you can buy it online at Tractor Supply and Chewy. So hit them up at Kinetic Dog Food. That's going to be good for Instagram and Facebook. Just spell it out. And then kineticdogfood.com. Or you can send out a text. Like if you have a question, you can call them and just talk to Dave. Area code 513-615-6904. And that dude loves to talk about nutrition labels and what's actually in the food you're feeding versus what they have. So hit them up, kineticdogfood.com. We're pleased to have as a sponsor Rec Specs Canine. They believe that in any adventure, whether work or play, is better with a dog by your side to keep them protected with you no matter what. Rec Specs designs and manufactures performance-driven dog gear for the active and working dog. Specifically, what do they make, though? So if you wanted to get some goggles for the dog, which is great protecting them from UV rays, sticks, seeds, ducks, right, hunting dogs, and rocks, FEMA guys, think about tracking or working in thick cover, rotor wash, dust and sandstorms, nasty basements or attics, or at the range. And specifically, they have interchangeable lenses. They got a dark one, and then they have a clear one used by professionals worldwide. One of my favorite things that they actually make is the Ear Pro. It's something that we use all the time. So one of the things that we do at our handler schools is we do obedience under gunfire with a handler shooting and with backup shooting and move from target to target. And the dogs actually wear the Ear Pro while we're working all the time, and we treat it just like we treat a muzzle. So the dogs will muzzle up, wear the Ear Pro, wear the muzzle. We're good to go. It knocks it down between 18 and 24 decibels, all made in quality in the United States. Rex Specs, REXSPECS.com, at Rex Specs Canine, letter K number 9 on the Instagrams and the Facebook. Working Dog Radio for your 20% off.
All right, everybody, we are back. Working Dog Radio, broadcasting the bite. Eric Sambro and Ted Stickles. I don't know if they can see that in the thing where your name is there.
It's not my actual name, but
I know. Ted Summers. He goes by Ted's. Dude, I was friends with Ted for a few years, and I said, "Why is your last name on social media Stickles?" He goes, "Ted Stickles, dumbass." I'm like, "No,
say it fast, bro."
Yeah, say it fast. Ted Stickles, idiot. So I was like, "Okay." That felt so stupid, but that's right. The humor's right in my wheelhouse. So, anyways, we got Steve Antommarchi with us from Next Level Canine Texas, out of the McKinney area there. Before we get into the study, my son lives in, he's a computer engineer down in the Fort Worth area. Dude, this summer, you guys, it was so fucking hot there. I went there. It was unreal. How'd you deal with that with your dogs?
This was the first summer we almost mandatorily put shoes on our dogs. We didn't have to ever do that before, but even just short deployments were causing an issue. After one of the dogs from Prosper was on a track, great track, did a great job, hard surface. The handler had to stop the track because you could see the dog was already bleeding on the bottom of his paws. So, and the dog wanted to continue to move. So it was one of those situations where like he made the right move, but the dog was out for 2 weeks after that, just recovering. And, you know, he had a little Dutchie who's absolutely crazy. So, you know, that was tough, but those are the kind of things we have to adjust to. So now overnight, we never really had to worry about that. We're all trying to figure out, okay, which dogs are having an issue? What shoes are you buying? What are you getting them from? Are they durable? Are they, you know, when should we put them on? When should we take them off? It was kind of on the fly. We had to figure things out.
Yeah, my son's lucky. He can work from home, so I think what he's going to do. His fiance's family's there in Texas. They're not going to move, but he's going to start taking summers into like Colorado. He goes, I'm never spending another summer in Dallas, if it's at all like it was. It was. I went there. I was only there for. I had a flight delay, weird thing overnight, and he picked me up at the airport. It was 10 o'clock at night. It was 97 degrees.
Yeah.
That's after
Sounds
Phoenix.
about right.
After
Yeah.
hits, we left hits,
Yeah.
which was 117.
Sounds right.
But you know, it's a different feeling of heat in Dallas. So,
Yeah.
anyways, Ted, what are we talking about in this segment here?
So, shit. Okay, so this I haven't seen the study. I kind of know what it's about. I'm gonna let Steve talk about it, but there's always been this kind of like undercurrent. In fact, one of the cases that you and I talked about, Eric, during our weed thing, right when Ohio lost its mind, they specifically mention hemp in the text of the case. If I remember correctly, it's State versus Johnson, and where they specifically talk about, you know, the difference between low THC hemp and actual weed. And so there's some like a little bit of discussion about it, but there's been a discussion forever about when we teach dogs to find a substance, right? Like, what are they finding? And like a funny story, we actually trained a bomb dog for a university, and the dog would give change of behavior on marijuana. This is before it was medical in Oklahoma. And, you know, like, what do they use to grow marijuana? They use ammonium nitrate. And they spray that shit all over it. And so the dog is like, yo, there's ammonium nitrate all over the weed. But my handler was freaking out because the dog showed a change of behavior on weed. I'm like, so I was like, what are you talking about? And so there was ammonium nitrate all over the weed. And he's like, no, it's not the weed, it's the ammonium nitrate. So inevitably what this conversation is more about, kind of like at the 30,000 foot view, is, and you know, the pairing and of like unintentionally allowing dogs to find things on the road and live deployments. And then this additional question about what the difference between hemp and low THC hemp versus weed is. So Steve, like, give me the knuckle dragger version of what's going on here.
Sure. Yeah. For in layman's terms, what everyone should be aware of is that both hemp and marijuana derive from the cannabis plant. Let's start there. They're both cannabis. So we should have the question in our minds, if we have marijuana dogs and marijuana, like I'm in Texas, so marijuana is still illegal here.
Like
If
illegal.
Illegal, yeah. So you could
like felony.
Well, not a felony. You know, it depends, right? It depends on how much.
If it's a concentrate, they love the concentrates down there.
Well, that is true.
Right.
Yeah.
If it's a concentrate, you're going to jail.
If you have an oil base concentration of Delta 9 THC, then yes, it is a felony. So just kind of going back between the differences. Legally speaking, now hemp is considered cannabis that has less than 0.3% delta 9 THC. And why is delta 9 THC isolated? Because that's the hallucinogenic property in the marijuana. So the arguments of, marijuana having some type of curative properties for ailments or diseases or whatever, which still studies are, being done now to confirm or not confirm one of those things. But anyway, that's legally speaking, that's the definition. Hemp is 0.3% or lower or less than 0.3% of delta 9 THC. So the question, go ahead.
Do the feds, because currently, as of the 27th of December, 2023, marijuana is still a Schedule 1 drug. Right. How does the DEA, the feds, differentiate between? And the only reason I asked this is because we had something happen here in Oklahoma about 2 years ago, which is kind of interesting, which I'll talk about later. How do they differentiate between marijuana and hemp, other than what's on the label?
Okay, so first, every state have adopted what they're going to do with hemp. So in Texas, it's House Bill 1325, which is in the agricultural code. But what they did was they just mimicked what the federal government already had put out in 2018. So they're the ones who gave that percentage and identified that as hemp. Since the Fed said this is how we're going to identify hemp, I don't know a state that has adopted another definition of hemp. So for all intents and purposes, in all 50 states, hemp is legal and defined the same way.
There we go. Which is about the only thing that the states can agree on with this. So, yeah, that's the only thing you can agree on. So it's not a 10th Amendment issue. I guess hemp's not. So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I just wanted, somebody asked me that yesterday, and they're like, what's the difference between hemp and marijuana? I'm like, the amount of THC. They're like, how do you measure it? And I'm like, that, grass, chromatograph. I don't, not on the field side. You can't do it on the side of the road. I know that. You're not going to measure that shit on the side of the road. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, and just to make it clear, CBD is a very popular item, right? The CBD oils. So CBD oil is to hemp what THC oil is to marijuana. So just to clarify, because I'm going to be throwing some terms out there, and I just want to let people know, like when I say hemp or CBD, we're talking about the same thing. It's just the CBD is the oil derivative, and hemp would be the hemp flower, what marijuana bud would be, in other words. Okay. All right. So it begs the question, if you have a marijuana trained dog, will he alert to hemp? That's a very, very easy question. We all should be able to answer. I'll throw it to you guys. Have you had any experience with hemp and dogs alerting, or have you heard stories of dogs alerting to hemp that were marijuana dogs?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because that's the story I'm talking about. So in an undisclosed county in Oklahoma, there was a large shipment in a 53-foot tractor trailer going from Colorado to another state. Now, Oklahoma has, in our infinite wisdom, we have permitting for fucking everything. We're not as bad as Arkansas, but we have a lot of licenses for stuff. Within our medical marijuana code, we have a transporter's license. So these guys were transporting a giant trailer, 53 feet long, a normal tractor trailer full of hemp east towards I think Tennessee, if I remember correctly. Anyway, they had to come through. I think it was they were on 412, which is a state highway coming through the northern section of Oklahoma. They were stopped, and they had this is the weird part. They had a armed private security car that was with dudes that were legally armed, were regulated, all that other bullshit. They decided to run from the stop.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it gets weird. This department and agency chose to run dogs on the trailer. They got positive alerts on a trailer. They were then given the shipping or they'd already had the shipping manifest saying this is what we have and whatever else. The dogs alerted to the trailer. There was other stuff in there other than just hemp, and it may have been used as a cover for trafficking. But the point is, hemp was used to disguise and or It's the best way I can say this because it's kind of still ongoing, kind of disguise or to give a probable explanation as to why these dogs would alert. And it was more than one dog. So it kind of like begs the question. Now, upon search, there was some other evidence that came to light that kind of gave a probable reason why like the dogs kind of showed a lot of interest in certain sections. But the point is, and dude's running, and there's a whole other portion of it. But initially, it was we're transporting hemp. There's no reason the dog, because it's a legal substance. We have our permits. Even our security chose to run with guns in the car from a traffic stop.
Jeez.
Yeah, they had, they're former military too. They should have known better. And not that military, not big military. So they should have known better. At any rate, yeah, there has been times where that's a notable story from here, and the only reason I know that one is because I was kind of involved in some of the people that were involved in that portion in the investigation, the roadside investigation. But yeah, it's happened. Initially, there was no explanation because it was full of hemp, but initially, after that, it came out of the facts. So I think you're about to tell us that dogs that train to marijuana will alert to hemp.
Yeah, that's not the only story we've heard
Okay.
in the United States. There's another one. I forget what state it is. In the Pacific Northwest, there's almost identical situation. You had an 18-wheeler traveling with hemp, dog alerts. They arrest the driver. The only thing in the car is hemp. And of course, they had something. They went to court over it. I'm pretty sure the department got sued over it. I don't know. It got litigated out, of course, because these things do. But long story short, we had to answer that question. So let's start how we did that. So we put we got it with Florida International University and their forensic lab. And the first thing we had to do is analyze hemp and analyze marijuana. And what they tried to do is figure out, okay, what's truly different when you lower the THC, the Delta 9 THC, what else is happening chemically to the hemp product that may give us an idea of what the dogs, if they can discern between the two, what they may be isolating in order to have success in differentiating between the two. So when they did that analysis, one of the things they recognized right away is that although legally speaking, Delta 9 THC is the thing that makes the difference between hemp and marijuana, the vapor pressure or the strength of Delta 9 THC is so low that it was under the threshold of any dog, which means the dog is not going to figure out hemp versus marijuana utilizing Delta 9 THC. So we thought we were going to have a problem because legally speaking, that's the difference. So what we did was we got 24 dogs from 3 different states as a kind of our first group. I had the Texas group. There was 2 groups out of Tennessee and a group out of Georgia. And what we did was we did kind of a blind study. Of course, the control was that the dogs needed to be responding to marijuana. So we had DEA marijuana. Dogs showed that they could alert to marijuana. We had a lineup of about 5 odors. Some of them were blank. Some of them had distractors. And there was a hemp product in each one of these. I think it was like 8 different testing areas at first. And I won't bore you with all the details, but this is what you need to know. And of course, the study will kind of mimic this, or in its own words, say the same thing. That about 80% of the dogs out of the 24 hit or alerted to about 80% of the hemp products. So what did that tell us? Indeed, the dogs were generalizing hemp as marijuana. So that came to no surprise because we teach these dogs to generalize. We teach them to generalize crack cocaine and powder cocaine. And we tell them, although there's cutting agents there that have really high vapor pressure, we want you to focus on the commonalities, the things that are general on both, which in the example of cocaine is methylbenzoate. So we know that there's extensive studies specifically through FIU.
You being an explosive handler know that RDX is a base for a lot of other explosive. I don't know the exact number. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the RDX base is, which is why the reason we use that one first, well, not first, but early on in the process. So they'll alert to RDX, they'll show interest in a lot of other tertiary explosives.
Yeah. For explosives, and one of the reasons why we imprint our dogs on A5 is because it has a higher concentration of the target odor on RDX and C4. So that's, kind of going off topic there, but yes.
Yeah.
All right. So we recognize that the dogs are generalizing, just like we've asked them to do their whole lives. We had dogs of all different breeds, all different ages, females and males, didn't matter. All across the board, we saw a gross generalization of hemp and marijuana. So now it's the oh shit moment. Like, okay, here we go. We figured we had a problem, but now we know we have a problem. So now the question is, okay, now can we teach these dogs to discriminate between the two? And before I move on, it's worth mentioning that one dog out of Georgia, out of Gwinnett County, Georgia, the handler is Jason Cotton. His dog was the only dog who did not alert to any hemp products, which right away should tell you, even though that's anecdotal, because it's just one, you may say it's just one off out of 24. There was still a dog who was so specific and so narrow about what he thought marijuana was that he did not alert to any of the 8 hemp samples that he was exposed to the first time. So that's good news for the industry. So we know it's possible without prior training, but not likely. So we developed a program, a training program, to see these 24 dogs that were involved in the study, or basically we had to agree on how we were going to do it. Because as you guys know, you get 2 or 3 trainers in a room, and have them agree on almost anything is hard. But the good thing is, myself, Paul Curtis from Tennessee, Bob Suarez from Tennessee, and Jason Cotton from Georgia, we're all trained together. So we all kind of knew each other. We knew the philosophy behind training. We understood what we wanted to do. So we all had the same pieces of equipment, which was vital in this situation. We'll kind of get to that. So basically what we decided to do, and with FIU's approval, is isolate each one of these odors using what we call the fence box, which is a high density polyethylene it's a delivery system for odor and a delivery system for a reward. So I don't know if you guys ever heard of the court system. Sniff Industries is the provider of those boxes. They were at HITS with you guys. I was actually helping Paul kind of show what that piece of apparatus does and why it makes sense to use it in a scientific case study, because of all the things it does, and it takes the handler completely out of the whole process of the training. So
in Knox County, Tennessee has 16 of my dogs, and they're all on those boxes.
So you know them very well then.
Yeah.
So shout out to Paul for being able to produce all of those, and we're able to utilize it. And we really think we had this level of success as quick as we did because we're able to utilize a piece of equipment to isolate the odors. We had no issue with, odors coming over to another. Then you have issues with contamination. So anyway, so getting back to what we ended up doing, we took those 8 hemp samples that were originally given to us. And by the way, like I said before, they were tested in the lab. They were analyzed to be truly hemp. It's worth mentioning because we alone in this area, Dallas-Fort Worth area, we went to a bunch of places like gas stations and hemp places. It probably doesn't surprise anybody, but a lot of the stuff they're selling is actually not hemp. It is, legally speaking, marijuana.
Shocker.
Yeah. No way. Yeah. You don't say.
Yeah. So,
but the label says hemp.
Yeah. And it's not being analyzed by anybody but an internal source, of course. So
why would they lie?
No it's way. Crazy. Yeah. It's like money is the root of all evil.
Who knew?
Yeah. So we recognize the importance of getting genuine hemp samples. And I will shout out the location that we get to later on because I don't have it in front of me. Maybe we can do it in like the notes of the program. But a place in, I think it's Oregon, they were the only place that had a third-party lab test when they sold you something. So they had no skin in the game whatsoever. If it failed, they wanted to know it failed to make sure that they were staying legally within the bounds of what they could grow. So even now, we still do business with them, and we still confirm the lab sheet with FIU's lab just to confirm one way or the other. But all right, so we get these dogs in, and we recognize that some of the dogs, after the first exposure to hemp, and by the way, we didn't allow the dogs to get paid for the hemp, even in the case study when we didn't know where it was. The fact that the dogs did not get paid for the hemp, and we ended the study with the dogs getting paid on marijuana again, The next time they were introduced to hemp, which was actually when we started the study, some of the dogs were already ignoring hemp after one exposure and recognizing they didn't get paid for it. So the dogs that are really, really good at recognizing, or you would say generalizing versus discriminating, the dogs that could discriminate rather well picked up on it really, really quick. I would say after 3 or 4 passes on hemp and not getting paid for it, and then getting paid for the marijuana, they recognized pretty quickly that there was a difference there, and they were focusing on the differences as opposed to the similarities. So the original study, it took us about 6 months because we wanted to throw the gauntlet at these dogs. Hemp seeds, CBD oils, hemp in all different forms. And what we found that the only thing the dogs ever generalize as hemp, as marijuana, would be the hemp flower. So there's no need to put your dog on CBD oil, anything that's processed in any kind of way. There's no generalization happening with the dog. So just to kind of recap, the dogs are not picking up on the Delta 9 THC. So initially, one of the thoughts were similar to like currency dogs. Why don't we just increase the threshold of an odor and say, when you reach this threshold of that odor, that amount of odor, you can alert, but anything less than that amount, you don't have to. Initially, that's what we thought we were going to do. But once we recognized that it's not available to the dog, then we realized that there's something else that's happening. So here's the weird part. We actually still don't know exactly what the dog is isolating to have success in the problem of hemp versus marijuana. But we know that they're doing it, and at such a ridiculous rate that most recently we put 18 hemp samples in front of these dogs, and they're generalizing hemp as its own category now. So they recognize it as hemp once they're taught, and they will still alert to marijuana. So after we took our group of 24, one of the things that we wanted to do was take a group in the United States that we've never worked with. We don't know anything about their background. We don't know anything about their handlers, their trainers, nothing. So we went to Wisconsin this year, and we took 43 dogs that we've never met before. And we're able to certify these dogs on hemp versus marijuana in 2 days, and with 100% success rate. So we know that it can happen. It's not just a one-off. Now we're talking about hundreds of dogs have been through a form of this study. So questions?
So is it like a form of, because, you know, regardless of what we're doing with detection work, when we're teaching them to find whatever, right? Bed bugs, narcotics, explosives, whatever it is, we're making an odor that doesn't mean anything, a meaningless odor meaningful, right? We're attaching meaning to a specific odor. So, which, you know, when during my handler shows, I talk to my handlers a lot about like proofing dogs off of whatever else. And like in the early phases of imprinting, even at my kennel, they are shown tobacco, like, unless going to a correctional facility, they are shown tobacco over and over and over and over and over again. Like, this is the point where they show aversion to tobacco, to the point where they're like, oh shit, I've smelled this 1,000 times. I'm not going to get paid for it. I don't care. Don't worry about it. And so is it that hemp and weed, because they're both part of the marijuana plant, are so closely related that the dogs now, because everybody tells a story, right? Everybody's heard Kenny Licklider's deal about like the dog walks into the room and you're cooking stew and he smells the onions and he smells this and he smells that. And I've heard 900 versions about how that's wrong and 900 versions about how that's right. And I love Kenny. Kenny, if you hear this, I love you. But and I mean, is it that the dogs are generalizing? They're like, yo, it's close enough, like it might work. But then upon some specific training, they're like, it's not close enough to get paid. And like you said, they can then generalize the difference between the two.
Right. So what we were recognizing is the longer we do this and the more dogs we get to the study, is that every dog is unique in what it believes marijuana to be. So let me give you an example of why we strongly believe that. And it actually speaks against conventional science at the moment. So I'm not going to name who, but I've had very, not heated discussions, but I think productive discussions with the scientists very well known in our industry. And he believes that every dog when exposed to a sample, let's say marijuana, that it is going to perceive marijuana the same. This is why we know that that's true. I told you we put 24 dogs into the study. Every single one of those dogs were already on the street and already had marijuana hides or fines and were already certified on marijuana. My group specifically were all imprinted on DEA marijuana that I had. You would think if that was true, that they would also respond to the same hemp samples, if that's the truth. You follow me?
Right.
That could not be further from the truth. So what we recognized was that when dog number 1 is given marijuana sample 1, that it is taking and isolating certain odors of marijuana and saying this is what marijuana is made out of. But when dog number 2 gets that same sample, he may be taking different elements of that marijuana and saying this is what pays me. This is what marijuana is. And because you have 2 different dogs introduced to the same hemp sample, or marijuana sample, excuse me, it makes sense that they were alerting to different hemp samples when the first time they were introduced to it, because they had a different perception of what marijuana was. Going back to Jason's dog, the dog that didn't alert to any hemp samples, he was really, really specific on what he wanted. I wish we could talk to the dog and he can talk to us back about why you didn't alert to the hemp samples. But we know it's possible. When we were in Wisconsin, there was another dog out of the 43 that also didn't hit on any of the hemp samples. So we know those dogs are out there. As a precaution, we can't just take that because the numbers don't fall in our favor, right? Even at 70%, you would want to see at least 70% success rate, that 70% of the dogs just don't hit to hemp. That's just not the truth. The truth is that about 80% of the dogs will, but all of them, every single one that we've had our hands on, a police dog at least, has been able to discriminate between the two through their very specific process using specific hemp odors. Now, we started with 8, and it was because it was a very broad spectrum of hemp. We wanted to see if there was any correlation between different strains of hemp, and maybe this strain was more likely for the dogs to alert. Now, I would say there was small correlation, but not enough where we can say, absolutely, this is what you need to focus on. So instead, what we're doing is we're introducing that same group of hemp products, the broad spectrum of hemp. And we strongly believe that if you teach the dog to essentially use it as a distractor and teach them not to alert to that when they get a hemp product they've never been exposed to, they'll generalize that as hemp and not alert.
This is something similar to this came up during the like the early the late 2000s, I think, with money and drugs. So the U.S. Treasury Department published that study where they said that X number of bills that are in circulation have traces of cocaine, heroin, like drugs on it above a certain current. I don't remember what the denomination is, but at any rate, any bill that's in circulation has got money on it. It's got drugs on it with enough concentration of bills, meaning you have a ton of it. Like dog will alert because there's enough odor. That doesn't necessarily mean that money was involved in illicit activity, but it's been in circulation, so it's had contact to it. So, and just today, I saw a post somewhere about a guy like, hey, I want to proof my dog off of clean money. And people are giving advice, contact the Treasury Department, they send you a bunch of shredded shit. And I actually have shredded money at the kennel that is clean that we got from the Treasury Department. They send it to you, they shred it up, and they send it to you that they know. And it's not actually money. It is, but it's like stuff that's like misprinted or whatever else, and they shred it up and they send it to you. So you can proof dogs off of money. So we expose them to that early on, but it's a similar like thing, right? Because it's apparent, it's a tangent odor. So it's an interesting like conversation. So when I heard about this interview and I started like kind of thinking about it and kind of talking to some of the people that are in my circle that are close to me, they were like, well, what are they training with? What are they finding? Do they know what they're finding? Do they know what they're training with? And I'm like, yo, I don't know. Like, this is all like, I don't know. I haven't even talked to Steve yet. So like, give me a second. So like kind of talk about that a little bit. So you had the one dog that's like, yo, he understood the difference intimately, immediately. And what was the difference in that dog? And it wasn't handling. It had to do with, I am sure it had to do with how the handler set up fines during training or imprinting or something. There had to have been something that they had to some way that dog immediately knew the difference.
Well, we know there's study. Well, I'm going to hit on what you just said, and then I'm going to answer the question. The question about money or currency being contaminated with drugs was, I think it was the late 90s, early 2000s. I can't remember when that came out, but it was rebutted by Dr. Furton from FIU, who said the reason why a drug dog would alert to money is only if it's been in recent contact with drugs. So I don't know if I said that correctly. Let me say it again. The only reason why a dog would alert to currency is if it had been recently in contact with drugs. So a regular drug dog, currency that had not been recently in contact with drugs or illicit drugs, or something that the dog is trained to alert to, would not alert to the currency because of the threshold. It didn't meet the threshold of the dog. So you're talking about like a parts per trillion. And we know most dogs are like parts per billion. And so with all that research, we understood that there are certain dogs that could do it, but the majority of the dogs are parts per billion dogs, not parts per trillion. Therefore, they're not going to hit on that currency.
So it's an interesting story because a good friend of mine who refuses to come on the podcast is a federal defense attorney, semi-local, local to here. And he's had several cases that involve this. And that was one that the AUSA was really adamant about. It's like the money is involved because the dog, and they cited this thing specifically. And I wish he would come on the podcast, and because he's hilarious for one, but he's an extremely talented attorney. And he's like, you know what? Come with me for a second. And he pulls the U.S. Marshal out into the federal courthouse atrium, and they go, because there's also a post office and other stuff. He pulls out a lot of money out of an ATM, goes back in, and they do this whole dog and pony show. And the handler says, if the dog won't alert to this, because, and the judge, a federal judge, allows this to happen, and the dog sure as shit in the middle of court alerts to, or not. They did it on video. They did somewhere else and did it on video, but they allowed the dog to sniff, and Rob's like, I'm not a drug dealer. And the dog alerted to the money that I pulled out of an ATM. And there was other things. There was other distracting odors in under the boxes, right? And it's the same dog that's in question, whatever else. And so it's one of those cases, U.S. versus 420,000, whatever, one of those weird ass. It's one of those. So, and, obviously it's easy to like poke holes in that kind of shit, but and the U.S. currency study does say X, Y, and Z because it is contaminated because it has, and everyone knows money is not actually paper, so they do have some absorption or whatever else. It's not like like Europe where the money is like fucking plastic or whatever the fuck it is. It's something weird, but it has recently come in contact with it, but it's an interesting. It's an interesting because there is still to this, like I said, today, somebody asked me about it. Should I proof my dog off of clean money? I'm like, well, I mean, there's no law that says that you can't carry on a bunch of cash. Ask Floyd Mayweather. I mean, but like, there is no law against it, but it does look weird. But I mean, so in one hand, I understand what's going on. On the other hand, I definitely, and it falls back to documentation and how it's trained. And then do you want someone to come in and ask the question?
Yeah, 100%. All of our dogs are trained to prove that they do not alert to circulated and uncirculated currency from the U.S. Treasury. We work a lot with the DEA, so we do seize a lot of money. They put that in that and the hemp versus marijuana stuff. They'll put it in their warrants that the dog not only does this, right? Not only is he a drug dog that smells out these odors, but he also does not alert to money and also does not alert to hemp. And that's really important for the judges signing this, is have a lot of confidence that, okay, now this is the nexus to money that we're looking for. A lot of times we'll seize phones and stuff like that. And, after we see the phone, that's the ultimate nexus.
And it's an interesting conversation because Florida versus Harris kind of tells us, right, we have to certify. And you can be 100% reliable in certifications and be upwards of 90, whatever, a lot of high percentage in the field. but then it makes your records discoverable. So it always interests me to see if people are doing this in training and how they're documented, because there's no certification. There's no anti-certification. There's no certification that says this dog will walk marijuana. In the presence of marijuana, he will not show a change of behavior or will walk a parent odor or whatever. It's literally just, do we have a positive indication of change of behavior, and does the handler recognize the change of behavior on a specific odor in a blind test, and a single blind test?
So I'll say this, that's probably the majority of
Right.
the third-party organizations.
Right.
I can tell you I'm the law enforcement secretary for the American Working Dog Association. And because I am, and because of my mind, and I'm always thinking about what's going to be upheld in court, if you have a non-marijuana dog and you want to certify through the American Working Dog Association, or AWDA, you must go into the marijuana room or be exposed to that. And in the comments, the instructor or the evaluator, if you will say the dog did not alert to marijuana. So although you're not certifying to that per se, you kind of are, because it is part of your certification to show that the dog did not alert to marijuana. And I have guys fight me all the time to say, I can't go into that room where you say marijuana is because I have a non-marijuana dog. I'm like, well, this is the time for you to prove it.
Tell me when you find meth and you don't, user amounts of meth, and don't find weed also.
Yeah. So it goes back to training records, and I know we kind of got off topic, but training records. What can you prove? What's been documented? If it's not documented, it didn't happen. So we have a list of distractors that are 3 pages long that the dogs are exposed to every Tuesday, and we'll mix them up. We'll get fresh ones, and just real quick, just think about it this way: our dogs are being looked at as sensors every year. We get closer to them being looked at as biosensors, and every sensor in this world needs a calibration, and we utilize that as a calibration, that this is what the dog is supposed to alert to, and he does, and this is what he's not supposed to alert to, and he doesn't. And that's an every Tuesday thing for us. We start with that foundation to confirm that the dogs, because real deployments, you pay your dog, you have no idea what inference he may be making on, maybe there's something else in that car that I get paid for, right? Although there was marijuana, or though there was coke or meth or heroin or ecstasy, maybe there was something else with a higher vapor pressure the dog also smelled, that he makes an inference that, oh, I just learned a new odor I get paid for. We always have that in the back of our mind. So how do we negate that? In our training, we expose our dogs to a bunch of negatives.
See, in my in-service, I lie to my handlers. They all have to go single blind no matter what. So with the few exceptions of some specific things, and we always pick something stupid to put out that is completely it's like axle grease and cigarette. It's just stupid shit every week. And then after the fact, I tell them, I'm like, oh, so when you're putting these in your records, you also had exposure to this with no change of behavior. They're like, what? Where was that? And I'm like, don't worry about it. The dog, I tell him where it is, but I'm like, he didn't show a change of behavior, so it doesn't matter. But so we do that with random shit all the time.
So when's the study coming out? When's the sky going to fall?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, that's not up to me. If it was up to me, it would have came out a year ago. But the truth is, I have to be patient, and I'm not a very patient person. Once I see these things, and I know the importance that this study is for the industry, because the defense attorneys are going to look at this and say, okay, here we go. By the way, just a very real situation that happened not too long ago in Wisconsin. And this is one of the reasons why they asked us to go up there, was they had a case that had nothing to do with marijuana. I think it was like a meth case, and a crap ton of meth. And the defense attorney picked up on the fact that the dog had no training records that indicated that it was proofed off of hemp. And it came into question and said, well, we know that there was hemp in my client's in his car at the time of the stop, and it was notated, it was on the body camera and everything. So what the defense was saying was that your dog actually alerted to the hemp, and then pulled some good information, which would be, hey, what was more available to the dog, the meth that was in the trunk, or the fact that your dog alerted to the front seam of the car where the hemp was? It was much closer. The vapor pressure is going to be higher, maybe or maybe not. But that's what their defense was. And it got to the point where they thought they were going to take it to the Supreme Court, the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And they contacted us and asked us about the study. And we said, well, look, the truth is, unless the dog gets exposed to the training, there's a high probability that the dog will generalize. So they ended up settling that case. But in Wisconsin specifically, these defense attorneys have been very savvy to this fact. And when we went to the Wisconsin Law Enforcement Canine Association conference, that's where we did all this. That story was told over and over and over again by handlers all over the state, that they were getting cases either thrown out or settled because they didn't have an answer to the hemp versus marijuana question.
So the case you're talking about is State versus Moore. It's the Supreme Court of Wisconsin. It was published in June 20th, 2023. They specifically mention that, and then they link a bunch of cases from North Carolina. Although in the episode we did that is going to be before this one with Eric and I just talking, there was a case from, and I think it's State versus Hall, which went to the state Supreme Court in Ohio that had the exact, it wasn't the similar fact pattern, but there was a similar argument made about hemp and CBD. Or hemp versus CBD versus like whatever else. And the Ohio State Supreme Court went the other direction, and they found in favor of law enforcement. They're like, you still have probable cause to enter the vehicle.
Yeah.
So State versus Moore, if you're listening to this, like I'll send the notes to Logan and we can put those in there. I'll send the actual link to it, but it's State versus Moore. It was published in June 20th, 2023. And I think there's another one too, right? From Wisconsin. I don't know if it's State versus Seacrest. I don't know if it's the same, if it has a CBD thing, but it's the one of the two that involve weed with dogs, for like post, like semi regulation for weed. So yeah, if you're listening, Wisconsin State versus whatchamacallit, what did I just say? State versus Moore. No, that's Ohio. Yeah, State versus Moore for Wisconsin.
All right, so before we take a nice commercial break, I got one question based off of our last episode. So at any point with any of the dogs, when you're trying to keep them from alerting on hemp, did you blast them at 127 on a dog chair e-collar?
Fuck.
Was that your way of training them whatsoever?
No, that goes without saying that would be counterproductive on many levels.
Well,
dude, there's a bunch of people in Ohio now.
You say that
officers that are dog trainers or vendors that are dog trainers have convinced the local populace, the brass and the legal side, that they can unimprint the dog on weed, and they just put the weed in a car or a box, and then they just smoke them on an e-collar, and then wonder why the dog won't sniff anything.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, anymore. Yeah. What he got blasted for was not the odor. I'm positive that everything else was what in that dog's mind he got blasted for.
You're not privy to the conversation that Eric and I had in the previous interview, but the question that I posed was, does the dog understand he's being corrected for that because he has a like multi-year and multi-thousand like time reward history of being rewarded on marijuana, and then all of a sudden he's not? So are we correcting him for searching, or like he doesn't understand why he's being blasted? So and all of a sudden they're like, he won't search.
Right. I'm going to say the same thing that I did in that episode. If you are a supervisor and your trainer tells you he can unimprint the dogs on marijuana, fire him. If you use a vendor and the vendor says, bring your dogs back to me for $5,000, I will unimprint him on marijuana, you need to void your contract with that guy and fire him as your vendor.
That's an oddly specific number.
Have no business, zero business whatsoever being in this line of work. Period. I know people who are listening to this who know me very well who have done it. And I'm telling you guys, you should not be dog trainers. You should not be in this business. You should shut your mouth. You should go back to your patrol shift and fucking flag disorderly conduct calls, because you got no business doing the shit that we're doing. Get the fuck out of here. Anyways, I'm a little pissed off about that still. So we're going to go ahead and take our second commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Steven about Next Level Canine Texas, and kind of what they're doing, what they offer, and some things like that. So stick around. We'll be right back. All right. Some of our oldest sponsors are the Perkinsons down in North Carolina at Highland Canine Training. We love those folks. We see them everywhere. All the stuff that we do, we go to, we have a good time with them. But the fact is, they're really good dog trainers. They're really good dog people. They got full courses in person and online. They got a dog trainers course that you can go down there and learn how to train working dogs, pet dogs, everything. They do a lot of business stuff on there. But one of the best things they have is an online supervisor course. The course discusses topics such as proper selection of dogs, handlers, proper deployment, and FLSA issues. 30% off with that with the discount code WDR30. Great people down there. They know their stuff. Tacticalpolicecaninetraining.com is the website. Tacticalpolicecaninetraining.com. WDR30 for 30% off the online supervisors course. Guys, you need to get on there and check them out. They are great. Highland Canine Training. Don't miss out.
One of the longtime sponsors of the show is Dogtra. Eric and I are actually both field staff guys. So Dogtra has been committed for over 20 years to crafting training collars to perfect precise fit and finish and intuitive design and accountable performance. The 1900 SE collar demonstrates what they strive for, which is an ultimate dog training tool that is durable, dependable, and designed for the most demanding conditions. And I actually use this thing at the kennel. They have the new black one that has the lock and the boost feature on it, as well as the hands-free, which we use a ton. If you guys follow me on social media, you see that I use that during tracking, and we do that negative reinforcement trick, which is that's the collar that we're using. The other thing is the YS600. So funny fact, that stands for Yo, Shut Up. The number of times that you won't have to say it because it works every time. So use the discount code WDR10 for 10% off any single item over $200. And of course, they also have the popper and the dropper, which I think I have 5 of at the kennel. I use all the time. So hit them up, dogtra.com, WDR10 for 10% off a single item over $200. It's no secret that Eric and I love Ray Allen Canine Equipment. We use their products every single day. The mission statement says it all. To be a world leader in quality and innovation of professional canine equipment for police, military, Schutzhund, and ring sport. To exceed our customers' expectations and to deliver on time every time at a fair price. We full-heartedly believe they held true to that, since it's our go-to one-stop shop for everything. Like, they literally have everything but the dog, the handler, and the patrol vehicle. Everything else they got it covered. So hit them up at rayallen.com, at Ray Allen Canine on the socials. They got a new training app and they got new product collaborations. Oh, and we have a new discount code, RAMWDR, like RAM, RAM, WDR, like Working Dog Radio, RAM WDR for 10% off. Hit them up, rayallen.com. It's no secret that I love my ALM suit from Arnaud out at ALM Canine Equipment in sunny Las Vegas, Nevada. I've had that thing forever. Eric affectionately refers to it as my Carhartt suit because it's so thin. I've had multiple sleeves put back on it, send it back to Arnaud. He fixes me up every single time. The fit and finish is top notch, and it fits me like a glove. I refuse to go anywhere without it. I work sport dogs and PSA without it. I just did a trial in California, wore that thing. I work police dogs pretty much every day of the week, and then I use it for personal protection dogs as well. So hit ALM Canine Equipment up on Instagram and Facebook, and then go to ALM9, letter K number 9, equipment.com, and use the discount code WD Radio for 10% off of your first order. And this is completely custom, so made to measure. Pick your colors, whatever you want to do. Arnaud will work with you. You can make it as thin or as thick as you want, but hit them up, ALMcanineequipment.com.
Dreamed of having your own kennel, but don't know where to start? Horizon Structures has taken all of the guesswork out of building a kennel. Everything is pre-built to your specifications and preferences and then assembled and dropped off on your land. Boom, new kennel. Hooked up to your electric, hooked up to your water, put dogs in it that day. And those things are amazing. You've got to see them to truly believe them. Get on the website, horizonstructures.com. You can custom build. You can buy one that's already built, go off of their design, come up with your own design. They'll work with you. They always are running discounts on the website with ready-to-go kennels. The kennels are already ready to go. There's always discounts. Horizonstructures.com. Check them out. All right, everybody, we are back, Working Dog Radio, broadcasting the bite with Steven Antommarchi from Next Level Canine Texas, down there in McKinney area. And with me, as always, is Ted in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We just had a very interesting segment number 2 about the study that I'm going to say was just released. We're speaking in the future, but and how they mitigated that, and we're honest, with the results, and didn't skew it, because here him and the guys that were doing the testing were cops or are cops. Mm-hmm. So that
And before we do this next segment, while during the break, I was kind of scanning through some of the cases. Ironically enough, North Carolina, I don't know why. I'm sure there's a reason. If you're in North Carolina, you DM me and tell me why. But North Carolina has a shit ton of cases specifically about this. And they have. And Steve, do you know why they were the forefront on this whole like hemp versus weed thing?
Yeah, so it's a great
Oh, you do
conversation
know.
I had with Mike Kamisic about this.
Perfect. So there's like 17, not 7. There's like 9 cases like that are come from North Carolina that are like hemp and weed are not the same thing. So what's the deal?
So their Fraternal Order of Police, or the FOP or PBA, whoever that organization falls under, right? Where the guys are, it's a union of some kind, right? Their head of the union put out a statement to all the law enforcement officers within that union, stating that there was no difference between hemp and marijuana, and thus the dogs could not discern between the two. They did that without any scientific research, without anything backing that statement. So the whole state took that as gospel and has now really screwed themselves and put themselves behind because of that. I would like to say that that was probably way too soon to make a judgment like that. And I get the spirit of what they were trying to do was, hey, we need to be mindful of this because we need to cover ourselves legally. So we're going to make this statement and get ahead of this. But there was no scientific study behind it. So
Well,
I'm just
I'm looking at the case list in front of me for everything in the country at the state level and at the federal level, and North Carolina has 8 cases that specifically mention with dogs that specifically mention this we're talking about, and it is more than every other state votes, regardless of the decision that the court went for, like suppression or admission. Like it is a fundamental flaw in, and I can see how it happened. I mean, kind of like reading the case notes on some of these, I'm like, okay, they had some insight from the FOP, well, not the FOP, whatever, whoever it is. So
yeah, it's sad, honestly, because what we tend to do in law enforcement is we have to knee jerk reaction a lot of times, and we jump to conclusions. I think ultimately, I think that's what happened there. The good news is, by this time this is airing, the study would have been out, the proof would be there. I don't know of any other study that had this many dogs go through it and attacked all these variables as much as we did. We had actual police dogs do this, not in a controlled environment in a scientific room somewhere with nobody there and it being double blind, and you only can do it in a controlled environment. Not only did we do it in the process and then we did it, but we had situations where we had hundreds and hundreds of pounds in a vehicle, and we introduced the dog to the hemp in an operational setting, right? Vehicle sniffs. The dog did a great job of ignoring it, and then we took it a step further. What we did was we put marijuana and hemp in a vehicle. We put hemp in the trunk of the vehicle, a large amount. I want to say it was about 50 pounds, and less than an ounce of marijuana in the center console. And we opened up the whole after the dog initial alert, which is actually closer to the front of the vehicle. We opened the doors up, including the trunk, put the dog in the trunk. He sniffed the crap out of everything, ignored the hemp. As soon as he got to the marijuana, smashed the marijuana and got paid for it. So those are the operational things we're looking for.
I can totally fucking appreciate that, rather than the clean, and I'm not knocking the fucking science, the spinny odor wheel from Simon Prinz or any of those dudes. Right. I'm not knocking that shit at all. Like it is, because it's super cool, right? Like it's cool, and like I get it, and I understand what it's for. But the dirty, and that's not the right word to use, but the dirty science of like, fuck it, we know these dogs have already been certified on marijuana. Probably all of them were successful with actual street fines. Mm-hmm. In prosecution with marijuana, right? So we understand like there's not an efficacy problem here, right? So we understand that the dogs have been successfully imprinted, deployed, and documented success in the field in actual operational deployments. They're not pulling fucking street dogs out of the pound, right? So we have a real sample population, and I can totally appreciate the dirty science. And you're like, you know what? We're going to make him pick. It's a competing motivator problem. Which one do you want more? And you have 50 pounds of one, or you have an ounce of the other. Let me know. And the dog's like, you know what? So that's something I can completely wrap my head around now. Scientifically, I'm not going to go into like that shit because they're fucking dudes with PhDs after them. They'll be like, you can't do that. It's not valid and whatever else. And I'm like, but operationally,
you would have to do it in a controlled environment first
yeah.
to show, excuse me, proof of concept. And once we showed the proof of concept, we went into operational readiness. And for us, if you're going to have a bunch of police officers take on a study like this, we need to see what you're calling the dirty science, right? We need to see it actually work in rooms, actually work in a different settings that the dog will actually work in, that he's already seen before. It's one thing to do it on boxes, again, to show proof of concept. But very different when you completely saturate a small room with hemp and you have a very small marijuana find and the dog is hitting on the marijuana, exactly where the marijuana is. For us as police officers, that's the burden of proof that we want to show. The science, I have to say this, working with FIU, they knew who, what our motivation was. And they allowed us to kind of do anything we wanted operationally and said, do what you believe makes sense and what's going to bring validation to the study in its entirety. So I'm really happy about that.
Let's get out ahead of this for everyone listening to this, because this is gonna be released like pretty soon with the study. So if you're listening to this, Steve, tell everybody where and how they should procure actual hemp that is not going to test positive as marijuana.
Yeah.
And then integrating that into training records so that they're already out ahead of this. Because I think if you're already deployed and you're running a dog in a medical state or in a completely like Texas or like a restrictive state or wherever it's at, like even if you're running an interdiction team and you're in a state that like in Oklahoma, regardless, if you need to proof off of this, where do we and how do we do this to ensure? Because I think the how is pretty straightforward. But where do we do this? And then the documentation side to get ahead of this, because I know that there's going to be some attorneys going to see this. They're like, bitch, we got you now. And no, we're not doing that. So
yeah, that's the beautiful thing about taking your time with this. Even though that again, I'll just tell on myself, I wanted this to come out a year or two ago. This is the problem, if you will, and here's the solution. The solution is simple. Number one, the place that we recommend, and I have to say, I have to separate myself from FIU because they can't make this recommendation. So this is just Steve talking to people, is Fields of Hemp in Oregon. If you go to Fields of Hemp in Oregon, and hopefully we'll have a link for everybody to go to specifically, they have a law enforcement website that you can go to and purchase 8 hemp samples, the same 8 hemp samples, are a broad form of hemp that we introduce their dogs to. We have proven over and over again that if you can teach your dog to ignore these 8 hemp samples, the likelihood of hitting on any hemp is almost zero. So there's the first part of the question. Where should they get it? I only have one place that that over 3 years had been consistent in the way they procure everything, the way they test it. Very law enforcement friendly. Even the way they're packaging it is in glass that has a cover to it, so no UV light can get in and do anything to that sample of hemp. So they're packaging it specifically for law enforcement. Ironically, they're calling it the next level canine hemp package. I have nothing to do with that, by the way. That was just the name they decided to come up with.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, cool. So
that everybody can buy it.
So the other thing is, and really, really important, is certification. Because we were a part of the study, we were able to go to the American Working Dog Association and say, hey, this is coming up. Guys need a solution. They need a third-party organization that's willing to have a certification that they could have, or the guys can at least try to get certified on specific hemp versus marijuana. So AWDA, which I mentioned before, American Working Dog Association, right now, this second, has the only hemp versus marijuana certification in the nation. So what you can do then is find an evaluator in your state, and they'll have the 8 hemp samples already, and you'll do your narcotic certification with hemp involved in every single part of that certification. If your dog ignores all the hemp products, then you will get a hemp versus marijuana certification on top of your narcotic certification. So that was at least a year in the making to make sure that all parties involved understood the science, accepted it, and were willing to put their name on it.
All right. That's really cool. We'll put that place in the show notes. They're probably going to get inundated with orders, but that's good. So tell me about the company, your business, Next Level Canine Texas.
Sure. Yeah. We don't provide dogs. I have to say that multiple times because a lot of agencies will hear the name and they're like, oh, there's a local canine trainer who does police dogs. I do not provide dogs. I train dogs. The Dallas-Fort Worth area is been very good to me and my company. We are going to provide not only maintenance training, but we're going to help with the certification process. We're going to help with, we just did a mock trial where all of our guys were put on a stand and asked to defend an actual case that they were involved with, something I wish our industry would do more of. You can ask me why I know that, because I failed in court many times. And after getting embarrassed in court, I realized how important it is that not only is your training records, spot on, and your deployment records spot on, but how you answer questions in court is a skill. And if you don't develop that skill, it can have detrimental effects to our whole industry. So one of the things that we do there, in addition, man, we travel. You alluded to it before. We travel all over the world, trying to just help local governments on any situation that they may find themselves needing help with. So we were in South Africa not too long ago, certifying some bomb dogs. We did some research on tuberculosis trained dogs and some anti-poaching dogs. Those are all things that are needed, that we're continuing to do research. So I would say this about my company. Yes, we do training, but we take a very scientific approach to everything, and we document everything in a way so that we could publish our own studies and our findings, because we find that to be very important from a police aspect, deploying in real world scenarios. What are the results looking like? Where are the failures? Where are the successes? And we just try to document all those things to better our industry. At the end of the day, that's what it's about.
That's freaking great, man. That's really cool stuff. How do people get a hold of you? Like if they want to reach out, maybe you need some help with some stuff. How do they reach you?
So depending on when this comes out, we're actually launching our YouTube channel in the same scope and idea of helping our industry. We also want to allow the general public kind of a behind the scenes look at some of the things we do. So we're launching our YouTube channel. It's going to be called Sniff Science. And what it is, I don't know if you guys follow any kind of famous YouTubers or anything like that. But it's going to be a mixture of Mark Rober, which is like the inventor of the glitter bomb, the guy who did that. And you know who that is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He would like set people up and they would steal shit like Bush Pirates and that. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to have a show very similar to that, where we're going to have subject matter experts who are mostly scientists and people out in the field, kind of give the general audience, we were talking about from 8 to 50, a broad strokes idea of all the beautiful things these dogs can do. And we're going to hopefully travel all the world, showing all the cool things that dogs do and how they make our world better and safer. So we're hopefully going to launch that in February, and I hope that's going to be a success, because I think that will allow us to get some traction on some of these bad publicity that police canines are getting. We want to play that other side and start really early and hit an audience kind of on the earlier side and understand just enough science where they get excited about it, where they're not changing the channel, but showing deployments and real life inspirational stories. And at the end of every episode, we're going to, go to a shelter, save a dog, train it, and show how that dog went from, almost at a kill shelter to leaving with a family, to try to inspire people to do things like that.
That's pretty cool, man. What about the social media stuff?
So everything at Next Level Canine Texas. It's Instagram, Facebook, all the social media. We're not on TikTok or anything like that. We're not that cool. But Next Level Canine Texas.
Chinese would just steal it anyway.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, maybe that's why. And then, of course, Sniff Science is going to be at the same thing. We're launching in February, so you will not find it anywhere now. We're going to make our hard launch in February.
You need to up your Instagram game. It's October 3rd, your last post, brother.
Yeah,
Get on it.
I know. I'm just so involved in the field stuff. I need someone dedicated just to social media.
Yeah,
that's what I need to do. I need to
tough.
hire somebody.
And I'm just breaking your balls, but that's the world we live in right now, where you gotta anybody. Hey, do you know so and so? I go right to look and see Facebook or Instagram if I know them. It's weird. It's just
exactly.
weird. So, what about you, Ted? Working.
Ted_Summers on Instagrams, and then Torchlight Canine, Torchlight Pets on Instagram and on Facebook. Oil Capital Canine on Facebook, and then OC Canine Fund on Instagram, and then HRD Police Canine. We have several seminars coming out for the for 2024. We've got a big one coming up with Jeff Shetler and Paul Ludwig in October of 2024 in South Carolina, which is going to be gnarly. So that'll be a 4-day deal, if I remember correctly. So be looking for that. I think it's already up on the website. I've talked to Ray, but it should be up on the website already. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Cool. Check out everything Working Dog Radio. It's Working Dog Radio on Facebook, workingdogradio.com.
Oh, by the time this comes out, the probable cause patches will be out.
Yeah, those should be up there. The new probable cause patches on Working
It looks like a Crown Royal bag.
Yeah,
is
right.
That says probable cause in the font. Anyway,
go ahead.
But before I leave, I have to say, because I promised Josh that I would mention this, and if I don't, I'm never going to hear the end of it. We are doing a workshop April 22nd through the 26th here in Dallas. We're going to focus on teams that want to do the hemp versus marijuana stuff. So if you don't feel like you have the funding, the know-how, the trainers, the equipment, we'll do everything for you. Come to our workshop. We're able to take a couple 100 handlers to do that this year. We're gonna team up with probably Street Cop to get the word out there, and we understand that there's going to be a rush to get this certification, get this done. Mm-hmm. We want to make ourselves available to the industry.
Make sure you send us that flyer thing so that Working Dog Radio can post it, because I have some teams in Durant and Ardmore that will go. Probably from the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics also.
Excellent.
So that are guys that are way on the forefront of that shit. So, make sure you send me that. Just
for sure.
As a side note. Yeah.
Steven, it's been great, man. I appreciate your time. I know you're real busy and got a lot going on, so glad we could get this nailed down and get it done. Hopefully that we're looking at, a month maybe, before the thing comes out about right. We'll get this out and get it going. Hopefully we'll just be sending everybody to this podcast to listen, at least get them going so they can tell their admins, chill the fuck out, slow down, calm down. The agencies I see that really panic and just shut everything down have piles of money. So they just, get rid of all those dogs, get all new dogs.
Yeah.
Get rid of all those dogs, get all new dogs. It's no other agencies except for the big ones can do that. Yeah. They just don't have the money for that. So
if I didn't answer a question that somebody has an answer or a question to, please feel free to email me, whether it's in administration. We get that locally all the time, where they hear about this, they're not sure about it, they have questions from their lawyers and everything. Next Level Canine Texas at gmail.com. Texas spelled out, letter K, number 9. Next Level Canine Texas at gmail.com. You can email me anytime. I'll be happy to walk you through the process. By that time, anyway, the study would be out. I can give you a copy of the study so you don't have to pay for it anywhere. Again, it's for what we can do for our industry. At the end of the day, that's what it's about.
Yeah, I like it. I'm glad we need people looking out for it. All right, guys, I appreciate your time. It's my 20-year wedding anniversary, and I got to go.
Indeed.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. We'll see you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Later, guys.